Hi, welcome to Quick Business Tips. I'm Jennifer Swineford, founder of Limitless Impact Agency, and this is the podcast for service-based business owners who want to grow their business without losing the heart behind it. Every week, I'm bringing you real practical strategies on marketing, sales, and customer experience. No fluff, no hustle culture nonsense, just what works. So let's get into it. We're going to start today's episode with a number 20. It took my client, who's a general contractor, 20 years to raise his prices one single time. So the same rates that he had in 2024 were what he was charging in 2004. Now, obviously, materials were increasing in price and he was charging the same profit margins, but labor costs go up and he was just charging the same labor rates he had been charging 20 years ago. He wasn't adjusting for his own cost of living, anything else. And even though he was very successful in his business, he wanted to grow so that he was able to bring his son into the business without him retiring first. So I pulled up a spreadsheet and I showed him what a 20% price increase would look like for his profits over the course of a year. He looked at me like I had just suggested the most dangerous thing for his business. His concern was that he was going to lose clients. So I want to talk to you today about what happened next because it changed how he thought about pricing forever. And I really think it might do the same for you. So I'm looking at the spreadsheet with my client and I walked him through the math, which is not my favorite thing to do. Showed him what a 20% increase would look like using his annual revenue from the year before. Showed him the difference, showed him how this could pay the salary for his son easily. He shook his head. He said, there's no way. I'll lose too many clients. I'll be out of business. So I changed the numbers on the spreadsheet. Said, let's not do a 20% increase. Let's do 10%. He was still very uncomfortable. Now I want to pause in the story here because I think what he was feeling is something that a lot of service business owners feel and nobody talks about honestly. This really wasn't about the math. Math makes me uncomfortable, but that's not the kind of uncomfortable we're talking about. He understood that the math made sense. He even knew that his prices were too low compared to his competitors. He knew he hadn't raised any prices in 2 decades, but everything around him had gotten more expensive. What he was afraid of wasn't so much increasing prices, it was the conversation. It was telling his clients that he was going to be charging them more, and he was afraid that they would push back. He was afraid of that awkward silence after you tell them what the number is, the fear that someone you've built a relationship with over the years will look at you differently or go find someone that's cheaper. See, the fear is not about the money so much. It's about how he saw his own worth. And that's what keeps more service business owners undercharging than any other reason I've ever seen. Because I've seen it a lot. I've seen it in other clients, and I've even seen it in myself from time to time. Now we got lucky because the same time we're having this conversation, my client was putting together a proposal for a room addition for one of his clients. Now, this was someone he had already done work with in the past. And this wasn't a bad client, but it was high maintenance. This customer needed a lot of hand-holding, a lot of check-ins, a lot of reassurance. He liked to sort of stand around and watch the guys work. So My client would have been just as happy to lose this job as win it. And what we had here was an opportunity. He told me he was going to show me that my price increases were going to lose him business. So what he did to show me how a 10% price increase would lose him business is he threw an extra 30% onto this proposal for the customer that he was going to present to. He wasn't trying to win this job. He was trying to prove a point. He wanted to show me that raising prices costs clients. And that his client, who he fully expected, would completely walk away and prove to me that I was wrong. So he took his extra 30% proposal, presented it to the client, and the client didn't even hesitate. Didn't need to take 10 minutes to talk to his wife. He immediately said yes. And when my client called me after his meeting with his customer, I was a little nervous. Then he told me what happened, and I needed a minute to really process that. Because what just happened wasn't a sale. I mean, it was a room addition. This was a big job. But what happened was that 20 years of undercharging got compressed into one conversation. My client spent 15 years. You're not going to raise your prices every year. So let's give him a 5-year cushion. So he spent 15 years assuming clients would leave if he asked for even 5 or 10% more money. 15 years he spent pricing his work at a level that didn't reflect the quality of work that he was doing. And in one conversation, raised his prices 30%. The client said yes, with no hesitation, no hemming, hawing, no negotiation. Not because this job was special, not because the scope changed or the number on the page wasn't what the work was worth. The client knew what my contractor was worth long before my client knew he was worth it. So here's what I've come to believe about service business pricing after working with number of contractors, realtors, landscapers, and coaches for years. Most of these businesses are not priced based on the market or their competition or what other people are doing. They set their prices based on fear. Fear that the client will say no, fear that someone cheaper will get the job, fear that asking for more somehow makes them less trustworthy, less likable, less deserving of this relationship that they're asking to be a part of. And that fear is hardly ever based on fact. When I talk to my clients who are afraid to raise prices and ask them, when did a client last leave you over your price? Most of them struggle to come up with a concrete example because they haven't lost clients over pricing. They have, however, lost potential revenue by assuming that they would lose clients by raising their prices. There's also something else that's often happening here, and it's worth talking about. When you do price yourself too low, you tend to attract customers who are price shopping. And when customers are price shopping, they are oftentimes the most demanding, the least loyal, and the fastest to leave the moment that somebody else comes along and the grass looks greener on the other side. But when a client says yes without hesitating to a fair price, that tells you something. See, they're not buying based on the number. They're buying you. They're buying your reputation, your track record, and the way that you work. Those kind of clients are the ones that you want to have. And when you set your price to reflect the value that you truly have, it tends to filter out the bad ones and attract the best ones. So once my general contractor saw that raising his prices wouldn't lose him clients, he went ahead and he made a 20% price increase across the board. And here's what happened. He didn't lose clients. He started getting even more business than he had when his prices were too low. He kept the clients who valued his work, respected his time, and were happy to pay a rate that reflected what it cost him to do the job right. His revenue went up, his stress went down, and a few months later, his son started working with him, which was the goal from the beginning, but he wasn't going to be able to get there with his old prices. Now, if it's been more than a couple years since you've raised your prices, this next section is for you. I'm going to break this down into some practical steps that you can take. First thing, do the math that you've been avoiding all along. Pull up a spreadsheet, take your annual revenue, just an average of the last 2, 3, 5 years, and see what a 10% increase looks like. Now, take the same numbers and see what a 20% increase looks like. Most people who do just step one of this exercise are shocked. Not because the number is unachievable, but because they've never really thought about what that number is before. They've been making this decision and they didn't even know what 20% was going to look like for them. Now we have step two. Find your own accidental experiment, the way that my general contractor did. Is there a job on your list right now that you'd be okay with losing out on the work? A client who's just a little too high maintenance, a project that's not your favorite, or a situation where you just have nothing to lose? Take that proposal that you were going to write and make the price what you think it's worth. Not what you're afraid to charge, but the value of the project that you are putting together. Submit the proposal and see what happens. You might be surprised. The general contractor I was working with certainly was. Step three, it's the last step. You have to understand that the clients who are meant for you won't disappear. Because the clients that are right for your business are not buying on price. They're buying based on trust, reputation, and genuine fit. And a fair price isn't going to threaten any of that. But, and this is important, an underpriced proposal might threaten that trust, that reputation. Because underpricing typically only attracts clients who are there price shopping. They're not looking at anything else. So raise your prices and let that become your filter to weed out the bad clients and only keep the best ones. There is something that I believe about pricing that goes deeper than the numbers on the spreadsheet. When you are consistently undercharging for your work, you end up making a statement, whether it's conscious or not, about what you think your work is worth. And if you're undercharging, that statement is a lie. You spend time building your skills. There's experience behind every decision you make when you do a job. The way you show up for your clients, your communication, care, follow through, all of these things have real value. And pricing yourself fairly doesn't make you greedy. It makes you honest and trustworthy. You are saying to the world, this is what this work that I do is worth. This is what I bring to this work. And I'm willing to let the right clients find me at this price. Now, the general contractor's son is working alongside his father today. And together they are building a company that they will pass on for generations. The business that got them there was the same business that it always was when the general contractor started it 40 years ago. But he started charging what he was worth instead of keeping his prices the same. Now, if you'd like a little more help figuring out your pricing and seeing if you are leaving money on the table, or if you'd like help building the confidence to charge what your work is worth, I would love to have a conversation with you. You can use the link in the show notes or head to limitlessimpactagency.com and schedule a free strategy session. If you know a service business owner who is still charging the same prices they were in 2019 and they're afraid to ask for more, please share this episode with them. Sometimes all it takes is seeing one person add 30% to a proposal and knowing that the client said yes anyway. If something landed for you today, I would be so appreciative if you'd share this episode with one person in your world who needs to hear it, because that's how this show will grow. And I am so grateful for every single share that is made. If you're ready to take what you learned today and put it into work to grow your business, I would absolutely love to talk to you. You can use the link in the show notes or visit limitlessimpactagency.com to schedule your free strategy session. We'll figure out exactly where you need to focus first. But until next week, go do something amazing.